Of the Planning Applications Committee. My name is Councillor Tom Bennett. I am one of the Vice Chairmen of the Planning Applications Committee, and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. To my left are the officer team who'll be advising us this evening, headed up this evening by Lisa Chung. And to my right are my fellow councillors, and it is the five of us who will be making the decisions this evening. I'll just let them briefly introduce themselves, starting at the end.
Hi, I'm Councillor Toby Benton, Colville Ward Councillor.
Councillor Sam Mackover.
Councillor R.A.T.F. Holland.
And Lloyd North, representing Camden Ward.
Thank you very much. First item of business, apologies for absence. There are no apologies. Second item is declarations of interest. So I have a declaration of interest for 5 Seymour Walk. I was an objector to a previous version of this application, and though this is a new application, there are effects the same property, and it's a similar application, so I will be recusing myself from that case, and Councillor Mackover will be chairing that case. Are there any other declarations of interest? No.
Chair.
Sorry. Yes, Councillor Oretti.
Not really a declaration, but item S39, no connection with me and the hotels, obviously. It sounds very similar, and I checked my name trademark still exists on my name, so no connection. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for clearing that up, just in case anyone spotted the similar names there. So we have 13 cases in front of us this evening. I'll just go through the running order quickly, and we've put the cases as we normally do with speakers up front. So we'll be starting with 14 Pembridge Road, then 19 to 21 Pennywern Road, 116 to 118 Gloucester Road, 226 Westbourne Grove, 31B Fernshaw Road, and those are all the cases with speakers. And then the remaining cases are 5 Seymour Walk, 155 Old Church Street, 37 Carlisle Square, 40 Pelham Street, 63 to 81 Pelham Street, 299 to 305 Fulham Road, 237 to 239 Kings Road, and then finally 53 to 100 Powers Square. I assume most people probably haven't attended a committee before, so just let you know how it works. On each case we have a presentation. We then allow the objectors and the applicants to make a short speech. That will be up to 3 minutes per side, and please do try and stick to that time, because if we run over, then there are procedural issues, and also it'll make what's already a long night even longer. Would then be questions from the committee to both sides, and then we ask questions of officers before making a decision. Right, so I think that's everything. So we'll proceed to the first case, which is number 14 Pembridge Road.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to confirm that the speakers for this application won't be speaking this evening. They've chosen not to, following the publication of the addendum report. So importantly, just draw members' attention to that, because there have been some edits to Condition 2 that are relevant to your decision, and an additional informative suggested by officers. So planning permission on this application is sought for retrospective alterations to the shopfront at number 14 Pembridge Road, adjacent to 2 conservation areas as identified in the plan in your pack. Turning to the slides, this is the previously existing shopfront. So you can see there were openable windows on the front as previously existing. And there's that in a visual and in the elevational view. And then the current shopfront that has been installed. So it's concerns were raised or have been raised around pedestrian movements, the sale of goods from that openable window to the front, and officers have recommended conditions that seek to mitigate any impact of that, and approval is recommended on that basis. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So no speakers anymore on this case. We go straight to questions to officers. Colleagues, any questions? So just to clarify, I assume the objections have not been withdrawn, it's just the speakers have decided they no longer need to speak. Is that correct?
Yes, I think the changes in the addendum have satisfied some elements of them. I think they would still have concerns, just assuming from reading the objections, with the openable nature, and they would always seek to enhance this building adjacent to the conservation areas. So it's not a perfect solution. So the objections are still valid, but the conditions go some way to appeasing the main concerns, I would say.
Thank you. And the updated condition 2, makes it clear that no business can take place through that window, but it doesn't go as far to say that it has to remain fixed shut. Why is that?
Yes, that's exactly it. So that it's been updated because Councillor Gardner has been in touch with me to say, how about if they went into the shop front, purchased their goods, but collected it from the window? It would still generate the same problem. So that's why it's been updated, although I've just noticed a typo, so I will correct that with your permission, subject to the decision. But that was what that edit was seeking to ensure. In terms of the fixed window, officers have given due weight to the fact that there were openable windows there already. So there's a balance that needs to be struck between, looking at the two together. So we feel it would be unreasonable to prohibit any opening on the front.
So in terms of what's there already, because this points to the design questions as well, how long do we think that design has been in place with the sort of windows which are different to the neighbours, as well as the fact that you can open them?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. If I'm honest with you, I don't know when the previously existing shopfront was installed, but I can confirm it definitely requires permission for what's there now. That is technically, as it stands, unauthorised, and this would regularise that position.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions on this case? Yes, Councillor Retty and then Councillor North.
Chairman, the question is about the future applications. If in case the applicant wants to use that window, can we enforce that, or can we reject? Thank you.
They could, thinking forward, is the one in front of you that we need to consider this evening, but if they did apply, it wouldn't want to use it like that, they'd have to apply to vary that condition or remove it. And I would assume the objections would come back, and it would be before committee again if officers were minded to grant permission. That's what I would assume would happen going forward.
I'm sorry to clarify the same thing again, because I'm aware of the concerns of the residents in the area that it doesn't turn into a lot of service going through there, or additions to original orders where they want extra this or extra that through that, and it gets spilt on the pavement and the cooking smells go up and all sorts of things. I thought that Councillor Gardner's suggestion to have that window fixed was originally a good one. Are you saying now that because it was an opening window before, we can't do that? Or can we do that?
I mean, technically you could. So if you thought it was necessary to make the development acceptable, but it's just that officers would see that condition as in conflict with the tests for needing conditions on an application. Because it was already openable, it's going to be openable again. We were very comfortable with that arrangement remaining the same, particularly given the sort of enhancements to the actual appearance of the shopfront compared to the previously existing. And the conditions relating to what's there now and what's happening now would be enough for us to take appropriate enforcement action should people collect from there or want to sell from there, we would have the authority to serve a breach of condition notice or, explore any other enforcement options available to us.
Just, sorry, I'm unofficially, I'm aware that sales and food items are passing through that window already. So I have a major concern that it's already in breach and it's already retrospective. That's my personal opinion. I think that there should be something more forceful to say that they can't do that, if that is what we're aiming to do here, because that doesn't seem right.
Can I just add to that quickly? Because I can see the argument that the condition in front of us prevents them from conducting any business through that window. So you could argue that solves that problem, providing they stick to it. In terms of the cooking smells sort of coming up through and into the residential units above, to what extent is that a planning concern versus an environmental health concern? Could we use that as a reason to require it be fixed shut?
So there's no proposed change of use as part of this application on the site. So officers haven't considered the implications of noise and odour because it's an established premises and no change of use has been applied for. But just returning to your question about being fixed shut, if that was the decision makers this evening, necessary to make the development acceptable in your view, it could be that the reason for that condition relates not only to the movement of pedestrians, but it could be to protect living conditions of neighbours above the shop. So that could feed into the reason.
Okay. Right. Well, we need to decide whether we want to add another condition on this, requiring it be fixed shut. Yeah. What do colleagues? So Councillor North clearly in favour of it. What do other colleagues feel about it? Remember, a condition has to be necessary, and I think we'd have to go beyond saying it's necessary to prevent business happening through that window and the clogging up of the pavement, because we already have a condition which prevents that. So do we need to go beyond that and say it's fixed shut for other reasons? Thoughts?
You pretty much just gave voice to my train of thought. It is just to be absolutely certain that no business occurs through it, and it's one of those things that I can imagine if it just starts happening, it'll be very difficult to find out about and enforce. But as you say, the condition is the condition, that says that already. But that's my thought.
Okay, in which case I think we do have to rely on the fact that the conditions can be enforced, and certainly we have vigilant local councillors and residents who will report it, I'm sure, if it's not being kept to. So I'm minded to stick with the existing condition. Okay. Any other thoughts before we proceed to a vote?
Yeah, only just following on from what I said, to ask officers if there is anything that we're missing in terms of how there's nothing there's no way I can think of to condition it such that we can keep more of an eye on it, or they have visits or something like that. I just thought I'd ask you, so I haven't not asked you.
We are reliant often on reports from our local residents of things in breach of a condition or unauthorised works. So there's no, we can, as officers, we're often out and about, and this case will be known to those in the North Area team, but there's no active, ongoing checking, if you like.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
Right, in which case we'll proceed to a vote. So the recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? So that's unanimous, and planning permission is granted. So we now move on to the hotel at 19 to 21 Pennywell Road.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is seeking retention of a plant at the rear of the hotel and installation of an acoustic enclosure. I'll just run through some of the slides. So this is the site location plan with the application site outlined in red. The site photographs, the existing plan, which is proposed to be retained, is just over here within the red circle and over here. The window to the left belongs to the hotel. We've got the existing plan on the left-hand side and then the proposed plan on the right-hand side. And then the existing elevation on the top of a section and the proposed elevation section at the bottom. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Councillor Wade registered to speak for the objectors. Councillor Wade, you have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Committee, thank you for permitting me to speak this evening. I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of 25 to 27 Earls Court Square. This application is effectively stage 2 of what are 4 interlinking retrospective planning permissions, applications or enforcement orders. The first was for the roof area, which should not be used by staff for their cigarette breaks or social gathering. This was granted, but there is no enforcement, and residents routinely see people on the roof, which is one of the reasons for the concerns. Second is the case before us, the plant. The timber-clad acoustic enclosure, as proposed, will not mitigate the visual harm within a conservation area or address the noise levels. It is recommended that the thickness of the acoustic housing should be a minimum of 100 millimeters, and should have a consultation with the residents about the color. Residents have asked for an explanation why the position of the plant and moving it is not considered relevant as part of the application. The current position of the plant is the cause of all the issues. Inconsistency in previous and current noise reports suggests that they should not be taken at face value. And the acoustic enclosure, and this is the reason why they're specifying the measurement, because they're concerned. The condition states that the plant noise should be below background noise. In that case, can the committee confirm that if the plant noise is at all audible, either from inside a resident's flat or in the resident's garden, then enforcement action can be taken in order to turn it off? This is due to the noise and I've spoken to about 4 or 5 residents, and they can all hear the noise in their flats with the windows closed. There's nothing in this application which will in fact reduce the impact, and the applicant has failed to address the complaints and failed to consult. This is another case where the applicant has undertaken works without planning permission or consultation within the RA, and so relies on the council to grant retrospectively. There's mounting concern that the council is so pro-business that it's failing to listen to or consider its residents, or consider the incremental reduction to the quality of life for the residents in that area. We live in the area, and Pennywell Road's got a lot of hotels, and so there is concern about the accumulative impact of extraction and the series of retrospective planning decisions which fail to acknowledge conservation areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wade. And we joined by Mr. Wilson for the applicant. Mr. Wilson, likewise, you have 3 minutes whenever you're ready. Sorry, would you mind turning on your microphone? I should have announced that at the start. There's a button next to the microphone which turns.
There we go, thank you. Good evening, councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to address the committee. The proposed plant replaces previous equipment which had been removed and replaced to provide a more efficient and effective operation of the hotel and a reduction on impact to the neighbours. The works are part of the overall renovation of the building and an upgrade of the accommodation. The plant has been positioned at the ground floor level to the rear of the building. It is located to the side wall of the hotel with an enclosure to be provided, finished off in white to reflect the adjacent rendered walls of the hotel. The overall appearance will blend into the existing built form of the hotel building and not impact on the character or appearance of the conservation area. A detailed noise assessment has been undertaken and an enclosure of bespoke design is to be provided to ensure the council's noise standards are achieved and exceeded. Once the plant enclosure has been improved and installed, the resulting noise levels will be mitigated to below the council's requirement of 10 decibels below the current background level. In respect of other matters raised outside of this application, we have noted the concerns raised by residents in terms of both the rear stairway and adjoining flat roof area. As a result, the stairway has already been taken down and removed from site. Access to the roof is now fully restricted to maintenance only, in line with the planning condition approved at the committee meeting for the rear extension earlier this year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, who would like to ask the first question? Councillor Oretti.
Thank you, Chairman. Question to Councillor Wade. Are you suggesting that they never had planning permission before they installed the thing? First question. Second question. If they had planning permission, are you happy with the enclosure because that would reduce noise? Thanks.
I understand that the planning permission wasn't, I think they extended, and I think the basic issue with the acoustics is it was originally at basement level and therefore wasn't seen from adjacent gardens. Now it's bigger and in a different position, which they feel impacts their visual amenity, because it's very close. You know, that, you know, in Earls Court, you don't have very much room between the background. And if you have the extension, which comes up virtually to the party wall, it actually restricts the amount of space that it has between the building and the acoustics. And that's the reason why they're complaining about the noise and about the visual impact, because of the change of the location of the plant.
Just a counter question to the applicant, please. If you could answer those. Thank you.
In regards to the previous extract unit, that was actually on the party wall on the other side of the building, approximately a metre away from the party wall and the neighbours. The current extract unit, which has replaced the old one, is against the party wall on the other side of the building, which is also, that is our party wall. So we have both properties there, and it's approximately now about 6 metres away from the rear party wall. So we are the two properties, what was previously the Lord Jim and the Boltons Hotel. So we've moved the extract unit away from our immediate neighbours, and it's now against ourselves, if you like. And obviously, being a new extract unit, significantly quieter. In the previous iteration, it was located on the roof level on the other side of the building. And being, you know, an older piece of equipment, it was significantly louder. This has improved it, but with the enclosure around it, it will improve it further again.
Could we just get a picture up, please, of the site? Just want to ask a question about colour and design quickly, but it'd be easier with the picture up. Yeah, so firstly, on the size, I think I'm right in saying it's not so big that it follows the railings round, is it? It's much tighter to the wall, much.
Those railings have since been covered in a trellis so that you can't sort of, to give privacy into that area and for the neighbours, if you like, so they can't sort of see that area. But it's, approximately about 1,600 high, so it's not as tall as myself.
And what's the depth of it? How far out from the wall does it come?
It's mounted on, it is fixed hard up against the wall. The pipe goes in through the wall into the extract on the inside.
Okay. But how far out from the wall does it come? I'm sort of thinking relative to that window at the back.
It comes out about a foot from the wall.
About a foot, okay.
Yep.
And then colour, did you say it's going to be in the same sort of white render?
At the moment, it's a white unit, and it's going to be a white noise enclosure that goes around it, baffles and whatnot. I believe it's white powder-coated aluminium, although don't quote me on that. But it will be white, the same colour as the building.
Okay. So just a question to Councillor Wade. So in terms of your points around enforcement of audible noise, I'll take up with the officers in the next section. But in terms of design, I mean, white does seem to be the obvious colour. Do you really think it needs a consultation?
I think the issue is the position of it. It was in one position. It has now changed position and therefore is affecting these residents. I'm not sure who the residents were with the previous position of the system was, but the gardens in Earls Court Square actually get narrower at one point. It's kind of slightly angled, so he might not have had a problem with the previous position, but it's now he does have a problem with the position. So
Okay.
it's not necessarily the high, yes, they don't like what it looks like. Yes, but they say they can see it from their gardens. That's the issue which they didn't see before, which must mean
Okay. Well,
that's the problem.
Understood. So just one more question for Mr. Wilson. The window we can see just to the left of the red oval in the left-hand picture, that is, am I right in saying that's part of the hotel?
All the windows you can see on the left-hand side are part of the hotel. So,
also the ones further left?
Yes.
Okay.
yep, so both properties, actually, we own both properties. They've now been combined into one property.
Yeah.
So, and if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, you can see our air conditioning enclosure that's been dug into the ground for the property on the left-hand side as you look at the picture. So
Okay.
the previous the previous kitchen extract was on the right-hand side of the right-hand picture. So it was on the other side of the restaurant, immediately adjacent to private residential properties, whereas now this is much further away from private residential properties.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Colleagues, any further questions? Yep, one more. Councillor Ressi, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Wilson, would you be happy in consultation with residents to change the colour if necessary?
I'm happy to put in whatever colour, it doesn't bother me. White was suggested because the
Or
building's
fabricate
white.
the colour?
But if they manufacture the colour, I'm happy to put in whatever colour is there. It's
All right, thank you.
Right, in which case we'll move on to the next section of the meeting, which is questions to officers. So I just have a question, it's one we often get on cases like this, about the enforceability of audible noise. So Councillor Wade asks if once installed and in use and you know, with the acoustic cover there, residents can hear it, what is the enforcement procedure and will it be turned off until it's no longer audible?
Thank you for the question. So the condition 3 restricts the level of noise coming out from the plant and vents. And if any resident will hear it, it means it's in breach of that condition because the noise level have to be below the existing background levels. And the condition says that if the plant is determined to be falling within this, to comply with this condition, they have to shut it off. And also we can investigate either planning officers and also environmental health officers as well.
Okay, that's clear, thank you. Colleagues, any further questions? No? Okay, in which case we proceed to a vote. I don't think we have any additional changes to conditions or amendments, no. So the recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? Right, that's unanimous, so planning permission is granted. And thank you both who came to speak on that item. We now move on to 116 to 118 Gloucester Road.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, one second. Sorry, Mr. Wilson, could you turn your microphone off? Sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank Thank you, Chairman. Planning permission at this property is sought for a new side extension to provide 3 new studio units and a new replacement staircase on the side. I draw members' attention again to the addendum report. We've received further objections to the scheme and we've also suggested an update to Condition 8, which I will explain as we go through the presentation. So this is the application site in the Cornwall Conservation Area. There is an off-site TPO tree just to the east. There's a selection of site photos for you, and I'll just draw members' attention to the windows kind of recessed within this area, talked at length about within the report. So these windows talked at length in the report. Turning to the application drawings themselves, these are the existing and proposed elevations lined up together. So as existing, as per the photographs, there's a kind of 2-storey addition on the back of the property that presents onto Gloucester Road, and it's proposed to add 3 additional storeys to provide those 3 new studio flats, and this addition on the back to replace that black fire escape that's existing. So turning to the proposed side elevation, and there's a sectional rear elevation to show you there as well. This is the view kind of looking back down towards Cromwell Road from Gloucester Road. So this is the ground floor plan, and importantly shows that new access stair here and some refuse storage located in this area. And then this is a snapshot, the 4th floor plan. The rest are included within your pack, showing that the new studio units and the arrangement for these. Again, we talk in the report about a key issue relating to daylight and sunlight from the windows identified on the back wall. So this is a view out of that window. Officers explain we have no concerns with regard to sense of enclosure, given the existing built form and arrangement there, but that there will be some loss of light to this bedroom area. On balance, we are satisfied that that is acceptable and in accordance with CL5 for the reasons explained, but I thought it was really important to show you the view out of that particular room. With regard to the refuse storage, which is located here, I'd just draw your attention again to the planning history of the site, because there has been some development on other areas of the building, including at the lower ground floor level. So there are some vaults existing at the front that are used as what are to be used to serve the lower ground floor units, and a refuse area to the side to serve the units above. It's a private collection has been arranged for the building, but to ensure that this is actually realised in perpetuity, realised on the site to be secured for those units, a condition has been attached to receive a full strategy and full details of that, particularly given the arrangements on site and the sensitivity of that location at that particular junction. Officers are recommending approval for the application, and that concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And we joined by Mr. Arif and Mr. Lester this evening to speak for the objectors. Are either of you here? Yes, hello. Will you both be speaking, or just one of you? Or Miss Lester isn't here, perhaps? Yeah, understood. Well, you have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Chairman, members and officers. We would ask that this application is refused. This corner site comprises 2 addresses and continues to be the subject of multiple applications. These have been listed in the objection of 25th of Jan 2024. The report fails to deal with the request to address this, no reason given. Paragraph 6.5 of the report refers to an additional 3 residential units to the existing 13. Planning was granted for 2 further units at roof level in 2023 for 90 Cromwell Road, bringing the total, in fact, to 18. The report does not appear to have taken this into account. Even if it did, the report repeatedly seeks to justify the level of harms as, in effect, not making a bad situation substantially worse. The committee will be aware from its own knowledge there is a high demand for competitively priced tourist accommodation at this location. The report fails to deal with the real likelihood that these 3 small studio apartments of 37 metres square will serve the short stay rental or holiday lettings business only and make no impact at all in increasing the level of housing stock for residents. This is already happening on this site and is the subject of ongoing complaints. No direct reference is made to the day and sunlight report submitted by the objectors. It should have been evaluated against the report submitted by the applicant. Changes to the fire escape will compromise fire safety, particularly for incapacitated residents. Improvements to the fire escape can be achieved by other means. The infilling of the gap on this site amounts to an over-intensification and robs the residents of existing light levels and a breathing space. For a heritage building in a conservation area, this sets a bad example and could be used as a precedent for similar over-intensification elsewhere. The CIL monies at 7.1 should be seen as a consequence of a good planning decision and not a motivator for a suboptimal one, especially where one group of residents will be paying a heavy price for the benefit of others elsewhere in the ward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And are we joined by Mr. Stamos and Mr. Kadem for the applicants? Hello. So thank you for joining us. Likewise, you have 3 minutes between you whenever you're ready.
Thank you. George Stamos, I'm the agent and architect. The proposed extension would preserve the character and appearance of the host building, group of building, and this part of the Cornwall Conservation Area. This is because the surrounding area is mixed in character, broadly displaying commercial uses on ground floors, hotels, and residential on upper floor levels. The upper floor levels of the application property are already in residential uses containing self-contained flats. The proposed residential use would appropriately harmonise with its contents in land use terms, matches the finishes of the existing host building, employing stucco render and timber frame sash windows with matching window surround details to the Gloucester Road elevation. As a result of the fire engineer's review of the existing building's fire strategy, it has been recommended to improve the current arrangement by introducing a new alternative compliant means of fire escape by replacing the existing external steel escape stair, which currently serves second floor down to ground level. A replacement stair is proposed in the same location as a fully enclosed protected fire escape, which will act as a new protected lobby, improving the fire escape strategy as an alternative means of escape from all floors, rather than just from the second floor and below. The proposed stair enclosure will therefore serve all units. The bulk form and location of the proposed extension is considered acceptable in planning terms and meets with policy. We are aware that there is concern around the loss of daylight to a particular second floor window. It is important to acknowledge that this second floor window until late last year was in fact serving a bathroom as frosted glass. The aforementioned bathroom has since been converted to a small 6 square metre bedroom and the window replaced with clear glass as a UPVC framed window. This UPVC frame window is clearly out of keeping with the conservation area and more importantly out of keeping with the host property. Furthermore, the window was changed without planning approval. The Right of Light consulting report commissioned by the applicant supersedes the Anstey Horns report commissioned by the objecting resident, as it is based on more accurate data which relies on digital copies of the architect's drawings, whereas the resident's report is based on scanned copies of the drawings uploaded to the council's website and likely inaccurately scaled up. The main point of contention has always been that the former bathroom window is exposed to an unavoidable loss of daylight given its position, and therefore the current use of the room as a bedroom is not advisable, nor should it benefit from the same protection as is usually afforded other habitable rooms. All windows in the vicinity pass a vertical sky component test with the exception of this window. However, the following mitigation factors apply as per the extract from the daylight report. The BRE guideline recognises that in some
Sorry, if you could just
circumstances...
conclude, because we've hit 3 minutes,
I will do.
please. Thank
The report concludes that the results demonstrate the proposed development will have a relatively low impact in the light receivable by its neighbouring properties. In the author's opinion, taking into account the overall high level of compliance with the BRE recommendations, the proposed development is acceptable in terms of daylight and sunlight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, colleagues, who would like to ask the first question? Councillor Mackover.
Yeah, question first to the applicant. I'm familiar with the site. I think we've spoken before at previous planning committees as well, because it's in my ward and a lot of people have to walk by it on the way to Gloucester Road Tube and the shops there. So it's a very high-profile corner. One of the aspects about continuing to add units is how refuse is stored or not stored, and we have a recommended condition which I see is amended as well. But I wanted to understand from you, from what you were saying there, the area that you propose for storing the refuse. Can you just tell me how large it is and how many bins it will contain?
The area for refuse collection for the new development is located adjacent to the replacement stair enclosure and is sufficient to suffice for the 3 studio flats.
So my problem on hearing that is that there are 15 other flats that have nowhere to put their refuse, because I understood from previous conversations that the refuse collection point is now where you are building onto these 3 new units.
That's incorrect. There is a vault, as the speaker Fiona mentioned earlier, at basement level, which is designed to accommodate all the refuse requirements for basement flats and first floor flats as well. And that was a dedicated planning approval for those actual apartments, and that's where they're located. In fact, the space is larger than required, so can accommodate more. In addition to that, there are additional 2 vaults which are currently unused, which can also accommodate refuse collection should it be needed. And
So,
I could just add as well that...
Sorry, yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
The applicant has engaged in a private refuse collection company which caters for the entire building, not just the newly approved apartments within the building. So this has been in place for 7 months.
Sorry, I just want to clarify a point on that. So the refuse area for these 3 flats, which say is sufficient for them, is that dedicated just to these 3 flats, or does it serve other flats as well?
Just for those 3 flats.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to follow up on my concern. So this is why there is rubbish dumped outside that building nearly every time that I walk past it, is because there is no refuse area being operated, because the vault that I saw today had some old sheets and some other rubbish that hadn't been cleared for years and didn't look like it was in use at all. And the other ones, which you say aren't in operation at the moment either. So the only place that people are storing their rubbish at the moment is on the street, because they can't put it onto the area where at the bottom of the fire escape. So I'm going to have to pick this up, because I don't understand how we can be satisfied that the neighbourhood is protected, because there seems to be a cumulative impact of these 15 plus the 3 units. You say you're going to be able to demonstrate the 3 studio units have sufficient rubbish storage, but the shops, post office, etc., and the 15 other residential units have clearly got nowhere to put their rubbish, apart from one full vault. But I'll leave my comments at that now, and I'll let other colleagues look at other aspects of this. Thank you.
Colleagues, other questions? So, Mr. Arif, the room that was being talked about that didn't meet the vertical sky component test, which was previously a bathroom, now a bedroom, and I think discuss this with officers ahead of the meeting. The fact that it was previously a bathroom isn't relevant. The fact is it is now a bedroom. Is that your flat?
Can I just give some background to
Very briefly.
Yeah, so I've been requesting the landlord to give me permission to change that bathroom into a bedroom, and I fought for about 3 years to get permission.
Okay, well, sorry to interrupt.
So,
I don't want to get into that.
Okay, yeah, so
it's a bedroom now.
It's a bedroom. It's a small bedroom. You know, it's not up to anyone to say, okay, it can't be used as a bedroom because it's small. I have a family, and my daughter lives in that bedroom. And
understood. Sorry. So it is you're absolutely right. So the relevant point is it is a bedroom. What I want to know is is your point, or at least one of your points, that there's been cumulative development that has slowly decreased the amount of light and the sense of enclosure for that room.
Yes.
And so this is making it worse. And A, it might be you're saying it might be unacceptable in itself, but B, also the cumulative impact.
It's a cumulative impact on the rest of the residential residents who are not here. We form the majority of the residents in the building, second floor, third floor, fourth floor. We're all leaseholders that have got concerns about overdevelopment of this building. If you look at the state of the building right now, the building is not managed properly. You know, and with 3 more units, I don't expect it to be managed. I mean, you already heard about how the rubbish is, rubbish issue, and other issue like vermin. So there are lots of issue with the building already. I don't believe that granting, these 3 new studios will actually improve the situation.
Okay.
And obviously, there's a problem with the light, and it's absolutely clear that there's a deterioration in light by 20%. And that's like apparent in both reports.
And so just to be absolutely clear though, you're saying the previous development has impacted that window in terms of sense of enclosure and light, and now this will go and impact it further. Is that correct?
No, not the previous development.
Okay.
But there's development planned for the 5th floor as well. So like a mansard floor.
Yeah.
So as Alan said,
so approved applications which have not been implemented yet. Is that the point?
There's one that's been implemented right now as we speak.
Yeah.
On the ground floor, they're extending one of the flats on the ground floor, and the work has been going on for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And recently, one of the building control guys came, and I understand that they had some problems in terms of what was being done. In terms of permission, what was granted and what was being built.
Understood. But I think that the critical point here is the light and sense of enclosure for that bedroom. But I hear what you say. Thank you. Colleagues, other questions on this? Yes, Councillor Oretti.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. I just want to follow up on the same question. Would there be an answer from the applicant about the light? I understand it's part of the planning consideration, but what would you say about the light creating a shadow to one of your residents?
Sorry, is it a question for the applicant or the objector?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, for the applicant. Yeah.
The applicant has carried out his own, commissioned his own daylight report, which has determined, as I read out earlier, that the detrimental effect on that window is not significant, and that it is acceptable in BRE daylight terms.
Councillor Benton, then we'll move on to questions to officers.
Thank you. So acknowledging that this is actually directly not a planning law matter, but it is something I'm going to bring up with the officers as to how the material ways this could affect our decision. Are these going to be short-term? Are these going to be Airbnb type lettings? I'd like it to at least be on record one way or the other. Do you plan for these to be short-term Airbnb let?
Sorry, it's not going to be Airbnb. Even the other flat, we have a long leases AST. As you know, with the
Could you speak a bit closer to the microphone?
Yeah.
Just if you start your answer again, please. Thank you.
So it's not going to be Airbnb. We're doing long-term AST for most of the flats.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and yeah, Councillor Mackover, and then we'll move on.
Just following up on that point, in the current ownership, the new owner who's applying for all this development, has there been any short-term holiday letting, Airbnb, guest ready, whatever the other services are, or each of the units that are in your control, are you confirming that they are rented out on and not sublet from that, but rented out on assured short-held tenancies? Just so we're picking up on what we see in the comments, and also it's good to have the discussion now while you're here. Thank you.
Yeah, at the moment, actually, I have 3 flat lets out of the 7, which is 2 in the basement, lower ground floor, and 1 in the first floor. All of them, they are in AST. The one in the lower ground floor is for 2 years AST, and the one on the first floor is for 18 months at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you. Very quickly, Councillor Retty, and then we'll...
Thanks, Chairman. You understand from the objectors the design was not an issue, it's about the small unit. Is there a reason you're going for a studio flat as opposed to a single bed or a 2-bed? Thanks.
The available space with the extension and considering the confines of the existing site, all that can be accommodated is 3-number studio flats.
Okay, so we'll now move on to questions to officers. Councillor Mackover.
Yes. Try and get closer to this. I just wanted to I'm trying to reconcile the amended condition 8, which is in our amendment pack, with what we've heard tonight. And I'll tell you, my concern is that should this go ahead and get built, we will then find that the only real area that's viable for refuse storage for the 15 units that don't have the basement vault that we know about, that refuse simply won't fit. And my concern about the impact on the sort of local area, which is a conservation area, is that the rubbish then, including of the businesses, will just pile up on the street as it has been already. So my question to officers is, should this condition, with the wording very accurately reflecting this is cumulative and it all because of this development taking place, it's taking away the rubbish storage area that the whole of the rest of the block is meant to be using, could we make this a pre-commencement condition so that the applicant would have to demonstrate that the spaces that they are proposing are viable and sufficient according to the plan for refuse, and that can be operated? Because if it all gets built, then the area that we think could be used for refuse will suddenly be built out, and there'll only be a little cabinet for 3 studio units and nothing else there. I know there are lots of other points that my colleagues will want to ask about, but I thought I'd just drill down on this one. And just while we're looking at the condition, in the second line it says which accounts for the property as a whole. I'm not quite sure whether that's whether this condition is just covering the 3 units or whether it's covering cumulatively the entire building. As I say, my case is that that the area that is proposed to be built on takes away the rubbish storage possibility elsewhere, and that's why I'd like to see it as a pre-commencement to make sure that what will then be built is consistent with the rubbish being able to be stored.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Mackover. We have actually worded it prior to the commencement of the development, but it doesn't align with our standard wording, the way we say no development shall commence. So absolutely, we can clarify that and make it almost more robust in saying no development can commence. What we've done here in the suggested wording is to include which accounts for the property as a whole, so that it does, that there's already no kind of, that the refuse strategy is evolving, let's say, because there's lots of different things happening on the site, as you've well pointed out. So we need to understand how it works as a whole, but at the same time, any condition must be, to meet the tests we discussed earlier, relevant and necessary to make this particular permission acceptable. So we can't necessarily fix the problems of the past with this application. But that said, this condition can go further to account for the property as a whole, show us that the fact that this sort of understairs platform area, which you've seen on site, at the moment, the speakers this evening have explained that's where they put their rubbish. That's going to go as it is enclosed, and we need to understand how it will be managed accordingly. So we're happy that that condition, as a pre-commencement one, but we'll tighten it up with our kind of standard wording, can do that. I would suggest, following that question, that we also update the reason for the condition to actually specifically refer to the fact that that open space is being lost, again, so that when whoever's assessing that condition and the details of it can take that into account as well. But yes, hope that answers your question. Thank you.
That covers it, Councillor Mackover. Yep, very good. I have a question about the, well, particularly this bedroom that was formerly a bathroom, now bedroom, that does fail the light test, and it is a habitable room. And I know it's covered at some length in the report, but I think it's important to discuss it. So, I mean, the conclusion is that the situation, if this development was built, would not be materially be different. So a couple of questions on that. Can you just explain a bit more why, even though it fails the test, it wouldn't be materially different? And the second question is there any consideration of cumulative impact here? Because I know the report refers to other things already affecting the outlook of that flat. Can we take those into account and say, well, actually, cumulatively over time, this is the straw that breaks the camel's back?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll probably just bring up the images again for you, because I think that's helpful as I explain it. So that the existing bedroom is a bedroom, so you should treat it as such, as a habitable room. Yes, it was a bathroom at one time, but it no longer is. It is a bedroom. The thing is, because it was originally a bathroom, it was probably designed against this other built form, and at the point of which it's the poorest outlook on that building, and it's the reduced light in that area. That's probably why a bathroom was put there at that time. But so that is the kind of existing situation. It is going to make it worse, so there will be a reduction in light. But what we need to consider when making that decision is the overall quality of that accommodation, and whether that percentage reduction is so great that it would justify a refusal of permission, bearing in mind that there are other benefits of this proposal, such as increasing the housing stock and the other things mentioned in the report. Looking at this flat as a whole, there are other points of outlook, there are other points, sources of natural light throughout the property. So whilst this particular bedroom fails in terms of the BRA guidance, it is just guidance, and we're considering the overall quality and amenity of that space. So taking that all into account, officers have concluded that it's acceptable that the room would still have a sufficient amount of light being received to continue in the same use that it is now, given it's already quite enclosed. It is already relatively dark within that single bedroom.
And I don't suppose you have an image which demonstrates an after, or can you? No.
I mean, unfortunately not, but this wall here and this window probably is best seen. Go to the existing. You can see this very small line here. I don't know if you can actually see my cursor. At that level, that is the wall in this image. So it would come up above that. So it would be within view, you would see it, but you'd see it in the context of that window already looking out is, limited in terms of the open aspect it receives. So there's two issues for you: sense of enclosure, bearing in mind that kind of view out of that window, and then the actual loss of light, which there is a loss of light, but officers have concluded it's not so harmful as to justify a refusal.
And that wall, gets higher, but it doesn't get closer. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly that. So it kind of continues from that point. So if we look at the existing and proposed, that's a good guide here of that existing line, and then it goes up higher, but it doesn't get, the width isn't increasing towards the window.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, any other questions? Yes, Councillor Benton.
Thank you. I have a couple, so I'll try and be to the point. Number one, and I do acknowledge a lot of these they're not directly to do with planning law, but so part of my question is how, their indirect effects can sort of affect our decision making. So I am wondering what are the benefits of an enclosed fire escape over an open one, number one. And I can let you answer, or I can go through all my questions, which you prefer.
I'm really sorry, I'm going to ask you to repeat the question because I left my microphone and I couldn't catch the
I'm
first
sorry.
bit. Apologies, sorry, that was my fault.
It's about the benefits of an enclosed fire escape over an open one. Seems just to me, seems counterintuitive, especially given the history of the borough. So I can go through all my questions. Or
It might be helpful actually to cover that point now. So we've got policies within the London Plan that require us to consider means of escape, and we have done so. There's an existing access there. There will be a proposed one, but the actual final details will be down to building control and if permission is granted. And I can't actually speak to the actual benefits of it in terms of fire safety, of enclosing it than not enclosing it, unfortunately. But building control would, if planning permission is granted, consider that.
That's it, you see, because I'm just going through the report, and I suppose I'm just trying to look for an assessment of that, and I'm not seeing it. Okay, so that's answered, thank you. Yes, the other, I suppose it's also been covered, just to note, I'm not confident about this intensification of this loss of light. I think if a room that's a bedroom is not getting enough light, getting less light, that doesn't really make me happy about limiting light further. Okay, so lastly, there's a possibility, again, this is a very open question, but is there a way of conditioning? I suppose there isn't. What I'm thinking about is these short-term lets, these holiday lets, these Airbnb lets. Now, to my mind, if we have units that and that's what happens, that contravenes our aims as a council. That's not helping us with housing. That's putting services under stress, as has been noted by some objectors. And obviously there are limitations on what we can and can't do. I do feel this is a material consideration in terms of what we give planning permission for. So my question is, what kind of framework can we and can't we bring to bear on that?
Yeah, so with regard to short-term letting, if someone does it for more than 90 nights, planning permission is required, so it counts as a material change of use of the property. So members, that's not being applied for here, they're applying for residential, but you could add an informative to say the applicant is reminded that planning permission would be required if it was to change the use. That's kind of as far as you can go under this application because they're not applying for that. Just talking about the bedroom point that you made and the loss of light, that is a key consideration for you, hence why it's discussed at length in that report. So I think you're valid in considering that.
Excellent, thank you. Chair, can we propose that? Is that something you can do?
Very, very happy to add that as an informative.
Excellent,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just had one last one. I think I know the answer, but might be helpful just to raise it anyway. In terms of windows actually being totally bricked up, can you tell, are they bathrooms and staircases? And just to confirm that although many people would not want their bathroom or staircase bricked up, that's not actually, can't be a planning consideration because they're not habitable rooms. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's no existing bathrooms and bedrooms being completely bricked up in any of the objectors' properties. But what it is that, I'll just show you again on the drawings to explain, within these sort of recessed areas, so this would be the bedroom we've discussed at length. The ones above the rooms aren't such sensitive uses, so they're bathrooms and hallways and things that are being affected. So it's really focusing your attention to the one most important one, which is that bedroom use.
Okay, I think that's clear. Colleagues, proceed to a vote. I think there's a number of elements to consider here. We've discussed the daylight and sense of enclosure, and that is an important consideration. I think on the refuse, it was important that we pursued that, but I think we now have a condition which does handle the concerns of refuse. Some other issues raised around the general management of the building, though important and unfortunate, are broadly not considerations for this decision, the refuse being an exception. And then in terms of the usage of the building, and this is residential, we've Councillor Benton's suggestion, we're adding the informative just to remind the applicant that it can't be used for more than 90 days for short-term let. Beyond that, we don't have any control, so we have to see these as a positive addition of 3 units, albeit studio units, to the borough and towards our desire to increase the number of residential properties. So then that has to be weighed as a meaningful benefit of the scheme. In which case, I will proceed to a vote. The recommendation, with the addition of the informative suggested by Councillor Benton, the recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? That's unanimous in favour, so planning permission is granted, and thank you to everyone who joined us for that case. We now proceed to item 4226 Westbourne Grove.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So planning permission here is sought for, in short, a retractable glass roof and the relocation of some plants at the application site. So turning to the slides, the existing use of the property, the use of the property will be a restaurant, and it's established in the planning history that it is under Class E, and there is residential properties above. So the report explains that there's an existing outdoor courtyard area, and in an aerial view it's best seen in this location. You can see in the wider terrace there's quite a varied building line, particularly at this end of Westbourne Grove. It's a full depth proposal with a lightweight design. Here's a closer aerial image of the site and just highlighted in red, and this is that existing outdoor area shown in photographs. Here are the existing and proposed lower ground floor plans, and showing that retractable roof in this location. And then there's a section detail here, again showing the retractable roof in connection to the property. And an additional section for you. And I'll just point out on this one that shows the partial elevation, this is the relocated plant that we're referring to within the report, and the proposed acoustic enclosure surrounding that. Officers have updated via the addendum report the condition relating to the terrace garden management policy to specifically refer to the proposed hours of operation, importantly. And we are, subject to that minor addition, recommending approval. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll be joined by Mrs. Fleming-Brown and Mrs. Rogers. Yes, hello. Thank you for joining us. You have 3 minutes between you whenever you're ready.
Oh, that's it. Thank you. I've lived for 23 years and often work in the flat next door, but 1 to 226 Westbourne Grove. 4 of our 6 flats have bedrooms backing onto 226's garden, and we have a rear communal terrace, so we're hugely affected by these proposals. My bedroom and bathroom windows overlook their garden. The noise isn't blocked by any extension, so it bounces directly into my bedroom like a sound box. This application confuses the restaurant's operating hours with the historic outdoor hours for the garden. They want to increase the garden daytime hours when the roof is retracted, starting at 7:30 a.m. and increase the covers from 24 to 38. As the garden is only 55 square metres, this crowding will greatly increase noise disturbance. 2 appeal results and other planning decisions took into account the effect of the reverberation of the high walls to the many residents. Restricted garden hours were rightly imposed by them throughout the years that I have lived there and should be upheld now. From 6 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. when the roof's closed, there's no guarantee there won't be noise from outside or from the roof mechanism or from noise and music transferring from the interior of the restaurant, as its rear doors will have to remain open. When the garden was opened at night in breach of planning permission in the past, it was impossible for managers to control normal loud chat, laughter and catering noise. It sounded as if people are actually inside my home, making it impossible to relax or work. Once granted, the onus is always on the residents to complain, as I've had to do many times, yet the inspector was clear in his report, saying relying on controls available through licensing or environmental protection legislation would be an unsatisfactory way to proceed. So please uphold this ruling.
The Pembridge Association objects to this application, which proposes earlier hours, too many covers, potential light spillage, and a large ugly roof with uncertified acoustic qualities. These will cause noise and nuisance for residents of both Pembridge and Colville conservation areas in contravention of local plan CL5. 226 Westbourne Grove is a small Victorian retail unit with a quiet rear garden densely surrounded on 3 sides by bedrooms. It's had a troubled planning history, as residents have opposed issues about the garden's use multiple times. The council's own environmental health department noted it's an unusually reverberant site. The last planning inspectorate report was crystal clear in rejecting additional hours as, quote, laughter, clink of glasses or crash of plates could arise and generate a loud and sudden noise, particularly intrusive and disturbing to nearby residents. He made a site visit. He actually saw what it was all about. People waking up or working from home should not have to deal with this at 7:30, 6 days a week. Extending garden covers from 24 to 38 should be refused at any time, as more people will clearly create more noise. The applicant proposes a dark metal-framed retracting roof.
We're at 3 minutes, so if you could just conclude quickly.
Covering the entire garden to be used 6 p.m. until late at night without any actual evidence of its soundproofing or the noise that it will make opening and closing. The roof isn't appropriate, doesn't improve or enhance our conservation areas or its setting. It's a modern structure without design merit, which converts a much-needed garden into an unwanted late-night venue, and its presence will conflict with CL1, CL2 and CL3. We urge its rejection.
Thank you very much. And for the applicant, we're joined by Mr. Kemp and Ms. Sumelidou. Sorry for the pronunciation. No?
That's not us.
I believe that's the wrong case.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I've got in front of me. Oh no, sorry, I'm read the next case. My apologies. Ms. Turvey and Mr. Anderson. Is that correct?
That's correct,
Yes.
thank you.
You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and members. My client is seeking to open a new restaurant offering an upscale casual dining experience. We understand that there have been historic concerns about the previous occupier's use of the rear courtyard space. Indeed, many of the points raised by the objectors today stem from this historic operation. My client is a new occupier, unrelated to the historic restaurant, and these proposals will provide a betterment on the current situation. It is important to remember that this is an existing consented customer courtyard with additional customer space on the first floor balcony with no capacity restrictions. As it stands, these areas can be used from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. Unlike the previous appeals, we are not seeking to change this. The proposal retains the existing restricted hours for outdoor dining. The proposed new roof structure, when fully closed after 6 p.m. Monday to Saturday, will turn the outdoor space into an extension of the internal restaurant. The roof will also mean that the courtyard can be closed during the day in cold weather throughout the year. My client is committed to being a good neighbour. Indeed, as part of our pre-application, we shared our proposals with our next-door neighbours and residents to the rear. The operational management plan, which covers the space during the day and evening, confirms this commitment. A blind system is proposed to address light spill through a condition. The proposal will also remove the existing covers on the first floor balcony and replace them with the relocated plant within an acoustic wooden enclosure. The existing plant in the garden is in an open enclosure. Again, a further betterment on the existing situation. This is a carefully considered design-led solution to improve the courtyard space for customers and neighbours and secure the long-term commercial use of the premises in the Westbourne Grove Special District Shopping Centre, all whilst preserving the character and appearance of the Pembridge Conservation Area. We have received no objections from statutory consultees, including the EHO. Notwithstanding, we would be happy to accept a condition to restrict the number of external covers to 28 to match that of the previous operator, who had 24 in the garden and 4 on the balcony. I'm now going to hand over to our noise consultant, who prepared the noise reports for both the roof and the new plant enclosure.
Good evening. RBA Acoustics have undertaken an extremely robust assessment of noise breakout from the courtyard area and also the new mechanical services plant. Having worked closely with RBKC over the last 20 years, we have a very good understanding of the expectations of the borough and are confident that the solution as proposed will satisfy all relevant policies. I've read the various comments made by the residents and I'm happy to respond to any specific queries that you, the committee, may have. However, I would note that the noise survey data has been selected to represent a worst case, and by that I mean quietest scenario. We've modelled noise breakout from the courtyard using worst case, in this situation highest, values based on the total number of patrons in the courtyard, and also compared that to published data for a busy restaurant. And our model has fully considered reverberation in the local area, this soundbox effect, to ensure that we have taken as robust a position as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, who would like to ask the first question? Yes, Councillor North.
Thank you. I'm just listening to the objectors and reading the notes here about this area. This is to the applicant, about the noise and the operation, opening and closing of the unit. Can you assure us that that is a silent mechanism, or how much noise would be heard by the neighbours?
The reason there's no published data is because they are virtually silent. It's similar to an electric garage opening and closing. It's not a juddering noise, it's just a smooth gearing.
So that includes, there's nothing, the electrical mechanism, yes, but the sliding panels moving back, they're not going to touch each other. You're saying that the operation to open and close is going to be almost silent?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. So first one for the applicants. In terms of this model that works out how much noise is going to be heard by residents, presumably that's a piece of software and you put in various assumptions like how many people are going to be outside, how noisy they're going to be, some sort of 3D model, you put in the materials, all these sort of things, and then it produces a number which says how noisy it'll be for the residents. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, we can assess various assumptions, which is what we've done. We've looked at what if there were 38 people talking animatedly and compared that against the industry standard for what a busy restaurant is, and we've used the higher of those two noise levels as part of our source data.
So do you know exactly what the product is that you'll be using for the roof? That's all decided and entered into the model, is it?
So this particular glass roof doesn't have test data for this model, but we've used acoustic test data from a very similar situation that we have installed or we've come across in the borough that I've assessed with Mr. Mahaffey from your environmental health team. So I'm confident that the two are very, very similar.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I suppose like anything, it relies on a number of assumptions, but nonetheless, it's still helpful. Just a question for the objectors. Am I right in saying that the crux of your objection is really around the hours of use? And if this was to be built, but hypothetically the hours of use of that area didn't change, i.e. it couldn't be used beyond 6 p.m, for example, would you still be objecting based on other reasons, visual appearance, loss of trees, or would that really get to the crux of your objection?
I think the problem is that this application confuses the hours of operation for the restaurant with the hours of operation of the garden, because they're effectively saying that when this retractable roof's there, the garden becomes the restaurant. We think that there is no data on this actual roof. It's a novel roof, and so we're not assured by the acoustic expert with respect. We also feel that it is a peculiarly reverberant site. What you've got is Westbourne Grove on one side, you've got Colville Road on the other, Lonsdale Road on the other. So there isn't the normal sound diffusion that you would get, if there was any space. And each of those roads, people have extended their properties backwards, their homes. And there's a lot of outrigging, which I don't think the photos really show, and sound just ricochets around there. It acts in a very unpredictable way. So when we actually accompanied the inspector on a site visit, the previous appeal, he absolutely got it because he experienced it. And that's why his report is so specific. And that's why he says, although that was in the context of later hours, that clinks of glasses or just the odd catering things which happen are disproportionately loud. It's a very peculiar site, and frankly, it's probably not a site best suited to being a restaurant.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But and purely hypothetically, I'm not saying we would do this, or I don't even know if we could do it, but if that area that is currently garden is proposed to become technically part of the indoor restaurant, if that was conditioned to close at 6 p.m, would that deal with the crux of the objection? Is that fundamentally what it's about?
Well, it depends whether the retractable roof is actually acoustically sound or not, because if it isn't, then it wouldn't deal with it. There is also the issue of light spill, because it will be a large structure and all that light will go up. There's no lighting plan, and there's no plan to actually shade any of that. So there are a lot of unknowns about it.
My only thought is, people using it at 5 p.m, they can use it currently at 5 p.m. and sit outside. If you built it and they were covered, and so they didn't get, so it could at least be used in winter, etc., there might be a benefit to the applicant whilst dealing with the residents' concerns, because they're not concerned about it being used at 5 p.m. It's sort of between 6 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. that is the issue. Is that correct?
I think that's a good summary.
Colleagues, other questions on this? No. Okay. So we proceed to questions to officers. So first question is, can we condition different times for this area than for the main indoor restaurant if this permission was granted?
I would say technically yes, but it would be probably difficult to enforce because once it is covered over and comes part of the... but I think technically yes. So going full circle, sorry, as I'm thinking it through, I think you can.
So we could put earlier closing hours on this area because I'm concerned that despite the model, it does make a number of assumptions. We don't actually know how noisy it's going to be. So we could put earlier closing times, and then if they could demonstrate that it was actually acoustically sound and wasn't causing any issue, then the applicant could come back later and apply for later hours. Is that correct?
Yes, I think it would need to be we'd need to update the condition 8 to reflect that and add a standalone condition relating to the hours, which then could be varied after there's sort of on-site testing, if you like, and potentially further discussion with residents to inform that variation, if you think it's necessary, reasonable to add that.
Well, just first ask other questions in a moment, but thoughts on that, putting a different closing time for, let's call it, the outdoor terrace area. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It depends on some other things.
Yeah. Councillor Makeover?
It is an interesting area, because if we knew that the acoustics were, the acoustic protection of the extended area was full protection, then the harm would be mitigated along with other things which I think we'll talk about, which is light, spill, etc. But until we know that, I think we have to protect residents along with the discussion that the inspector has made reference to, and find the way that the wording can protect that. And also, just while we're talking about hours, I think I wanted to point out that on condition 8, it doesn't actually refer to any hours. It just talks about a management policy. And so I think if we can be very clear on hours, I think it would give ourselves and residents some assurance on that. But yeah, work through the details. But I think it's a good way forward.
Great. Any other questions then? Yeah, Councillor Benton, then Councillor North.
Thanks. Number one, just to pick up on one of the responses to the objections. Why is a trial period, like a temporary conditions, limited to a year or whatever? Why is that inappropriate? I'm not quite sure I understand the reasoning in that as it's written.
I think it's because of the investment involved in building the structure. If they built it all and then we only said you could have it for a year, it would be unreasonable for us to do that. There could be trial periods within their garden management policy, but I think again that would be difficult to enforce. So a standalone hours of operation one is, if that's what you're considering as the committee, would be the best way.
Yeah, I think what I'm thinking is that, for instance, well, actually, to be honest, now we're talking about limiting hours, then that actually sort of addresses that. But that was really what I was thinking, was trying different hours for a certain amount of time. I'd also like to ask a separate question, if you don't have anything to add to that, okay? Which is, it's about the change of use issue, and it's a bit muddy to me. Like it seems like, while technically it's all considered part of the restaurant, de facto what's happened is it's not been part of the restaurant. So I know we can only work with what's been written and all of that, but can't we consider, it seems to me like on some level it is a de facto change of use because it's not considered part of the restaurant now, and it will be, and then that will bring more on all the things we've been talking about. And just as a sort of addendum to that, The light report mentioned in condition 7, plan, whatever it is, lighting plan. I mean, it's glass. I mean, how much can you really mitigate light with a glass roof is my question. Thanks.
Starting with the use, so planning permission was granted for the use of a restaurant back in 2016, and it's kind of established within that because condition 4, it was actually granted on appeal, but condition 4 of that talked about the outdoor areas at the rear of the premises and the balcony, and that's where they limited it from 6 till 10 shall not be used. And that's where those hours kind of have evolved from. So the use of the outdoor area is well established, but only till 6 p.m. With regard to the light report, this is something that often comes up at committee, and measures for light spill. It's difficult. There will be some light spill from that roof. Similarly, there would be lighting that you could put in without planning permission. So it is a balancing exercise, and your planning judgment that you'd need to come to as to whether or not you think there's harm there.
Thanks. So, I mean, how do we make that slightly more rigidly enforceable? Like, because my thought is, well, allow if it's over a certain, I would think, relatively low amount of light spillage. If it's above that, then don't go ahead. That's what I'm thinking. But is that covered, or is that something we could tighten up?
We've got the submission of details we've asked for, and we've asked for it to include detailed methods to reduce light spill. So that should provide us with an understanding of how they're going to do that, whether that is internal blinds and things. How enforceable that is difficult, but there should be measures included to satisfy that condition. I'm not sure where else we could seek to do it, because I think it is a glazed roof, and it will be used up until potentially 10:30, depending on the outcome of this decision this evening. So that has to be considered, in your planning judgment, giving due mind to sort of the other developments in the area, the other window openings at the back there, and the fact that it can be used and lit at the moment.
So I think if we go back to the point I was making earlier, if we were to put on a condition saying it can only be used until 6 p.m, which is the current condition for the garden, then that deals both with the noise and the light issue, because then, if applicants go ahead and build it, then we would see how much light there was, you'd see how noisy it was, and then if they came back and applied for an extension to 10:30 or 11:30, there'd be a lot more evidence to go on, rather than sort of a certain degree of guesswork, which is what we're working with at the moment. So if colleagues agree, I'm going to suggest adding a condition to limit it to the current closure time of 6 p.m. Does that
Can I
make
suggest
sense?
an alternative?
Sorry, we can't. I do apologise. Sometimes it could be useful to engage when we're in this section of the meeting, but legally we're not allowed to. It would be sort of pulled up on procedure. So we need to decide as a committee with the advice of officers.
It might be helpful to delegate authority to us to reconsider the conditions to secure that 6 p.m. cut-off time, because of we've got the garden terrace management policy condition and other ones that may need to be updated as well. If it's 6 p.m. you can close, or if it's a trial period of a year of a certain amount reverting to 6 p.m. whatever you've had the discussion around, unless Ms. Chung has any inspired ideas of how to resolve this.
No more than what you've said.
Well, in terms of how it's done, I think that's a good idea that officers figure out I think the will of the committee is that it's 6 p.m. is the latest customers can be in that area, and past 6 p.m. They need to be out of there. And I'd have thought, if it needs half an hour for clean-up before the lights are turned off, that's acceptable. But broadly, a 6 p.m. cut-off time, in terms of how that's done, I'll leave that to you. What about start time? The garden area is currently 10 a.m. I don't think the start time is quite so important. People aren't normally so noisy in the morning. Do colleagues have any view? Yeah. Well, maybe we just focus on the closure time then. So yeah, leave that with officers to determine how to do that. And we've still got I think we leave in place the other conditions around light spillage and such like. Yes, Councillor Retty. So, yeah, do you want to put the microphone on?
Yeah, I understand. It's difficult to run a few businesses when the time that's really important for the business to run, essentially if it's a restaurant. So my question to you is, how soon if they meet the threshold, or if the enclosure is protecting that noise, and there's a clear evidence that there's no issues with the lighting and the noise, how soon can they reapply for the application? Is there a time period? Because obviously we're looking at business sustainability.
I mean,
as well.
I don't think we can set a specific time period. Obviously, if they just came after a week of use, that wouldn't be. They can put in an application at any time, but it wouldn't be a lot of evidence. But if you had 12 months, the summer season, 12 months of use, something like that, then that would be a reasonable amount of evidence that you might want to bring back to an application. But in terms of when people can apply, welcome to apply at any time. We can't set limits on that. Okay, I think that's a good addition to the conditions. Yes, Councillor North.
In the scale of things, it's a fairly minor thing, but I picked up from the objectors the concerns over the noise of the operating of the machinery. I'm probably a bit out of touch with these things. They, in the past, were a bit clanky and clunky. We've got an assurance from the applicant that it's almost silent. Is there a condition that we can add in there to make sure that is so? That would reassure the objectors and would go along with what the applicant said anyway.
I'm not sure if we could put a condition on about the
same with an air conditioning unit, that type of thing.
Yeah. Actually, no, we probably could. So the noise, using the format of an air conditioning unit, but I don't think we couldn't insist that it was sort of minus 10 dB below background level, because the difference with an air conditioning unit is that it's an ongoing noise for a long period of time. It may not be reasonable to insist that it's below that noise at that point, but it may be that it's no higher than background noise level and isn't. I guess they could open and close it over the course of time.
What we have done for plant that isn't your bog standard aircon unit is we've asked for a noise assessment to be submitted post-operation. There is a risk there, though, that if it's really noisy and you don't have a caveat within that condition that says you can't use it, it doesn't really mean anything. It just tells you that it's noisy. So we have to be quite careful with that. We tend to do it where we have a noise report that gives us some information, and to confirm that we ask for a post-installation. But here it's a bit different because it's an unknown.
Can we delegate that to officers to say, conditions, a noise report to be submitted and approved? And so if the noise report says that it's going to be incredibly noisy, then it wouldn't be. I don't feel comfortable putting a specific dB limit on because we'd just be guessing as to what it should be.
You can. I think the risk there is that you then get a noise report as part of a condition, and you're potentially refusing it over and over again because it's too noisy. Normally for something like this, we would ask that a noise report is submitted as part of the application so that we can fully assess the impact, because in applying conditions they have to meet a range of tests, And one of them is that it's reasonable. So it could be seen as unreasonable to condition something that is a complete unknown, and you just go around in a loop of always refusing it because it will never demonstrate.
Can I suggest then that, I mean, you're going to have the manufacturer is going to offer some sort of report to say that this is how noisy our machinery is. It wouldn't be unreasonable to consider that as part of the report prior to commencement. Then it wouldn't be that you put the machinery in place, you'd know beforehand.
Unless it wasn't done as a report and it was prior to the commencement of development, full details of the manufacturing, detailing how, you know, the noise implications.
Exactly, because the applicant's
then
quite
if
confident.
it's unacceptable, which it's unlikely to be, we hope, given what the applicant has said. So it might be in more of a details condition, Lisa, rather than...
It is, but you still run the risk of being in a position where you've got a permission that's unimplementable. It's completely up to you as the decision maker. I think if you've conditioned that it can't be used after 6 p.m, you know, it's not unreasonable for daytime noise to be noisy. I know different parts of the borough are quieter than others, but I don't think it would be so unreasonable on this particular road that you have probably quite a high level of background noise at times. I think that 6 p.m. cut-off, if that's sufficient. But again, as decision makers, it's up to you how you do it. I would suggest, though, it would be a pre-commencement condition so the applicant has to do it before they do any works, and it limits obviously their risk.
Well, I think it's sensible, details to be submitted, and then if RBKC Environmental Health say, you know, this is unacceptable, it's much better for the applicant that they, as you say, know that before buying it and installing it than afterwards, and they're told actually that's unacceptable to use. So if we add that as the details of pre-commencement details to be submitted. Yes, Councillor Benton.
Thank you. Just what I'm hearing is that this is what I think we're also partly operating off the assumption that there might be an application to extend these hours in the future at some point. In which case, if it's just noted as part of this case, it's not part of our, in addition to whatever we can put in the details and conditions, etc., then just that a noise report of this nature will be part of, you know, a future request to, you know, extend these hours. Does that make sense? I mean, that kind of goes beyond the scope of what we're doing here, but if it ends up part of the history of the application, then
I think pass it on in a moment, but I think we've sort of made that clear as a committee. It's sort of minuted, and applicants would know that in any future application to extend hours would expect a noise. Well, at that point it would be an assessment because it would be installed. Is that right, Ms. Ray?
Yeah, I think they would hopefully have the foresight that you may raise this question again, and if they were unably got it right in terms of the after 6 p.m. thing, the light pollution, but then failed on the opening and closing. So I think, following your discussions, it would be the 6 p.m. kind of cut-off and details to confirm how noisy that opening would be prior to commencement.
Okay, I think that's all clear. We've got those added to the conditions. Any other questions before we proceed to a vote? No? In which case, the recommendation with the conditions added, most importantly, the 6 p.m. cut-off, the recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? So that's unanimous. So planning permission is granted, and thank you to everyone who joined us for that case. We now move on to 31B Fernshaw Road.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is seeking planning permission for various extensions to a property at 31 Fernshaw Road. Planning permission has previously been granted for majority of the works proposed within this current application. However, permission is sought for an additional extension at the first floor level. I'll just run through some slides. So this is the application side with the arrow pointed towards the building. It is quite unusual given the properties around the site and its background development. The access to the site is via this side door, just on the photo on the right-hand side. And again, you can see the access through here, and there's a side passage towards the property. There are some photographs of the application site, and this is the existing alleyway. We've got the existing ground floor plan on the left-hand side and proposed on the right-hand side. We've got the first floor plan showing the existing first floor plan, the previously approved extension and now currently proposed. The red hatch area is the additional extension that the applicant is seeking permission for. This is the existing northwest elevation. Members can see the existing garage and the covered access to the property. The approved extension on the top and the proposed at the bottom. You can see the additional extension just over here. Hopefully you can see my cursor. This is the existing southwest elevation. This is along the boundary with properties along Fernshore Road. And then we've got the approved scheme on the top and the proposed extension and the scheme at the bottom. Again, this is the additional extension that the permission is seeking permission for. This is the existing east elevation, and then the proposed north elevation along Edith Grove. There's no changes proposed between the previously granted scheme and the current permission. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're joined by Mr. Weatherly. Mr. Weatherly, thank you for joining us. Mr. Weatherly, you have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. So this application was described in the officer report as a modest first floor extension, but actually it's going to be an imposing brickwork and a massive block construction with the new roof over 2 feet higher than the original building. The impact on the light is significant for a number of properties. The light service submitted took a spot date and not an average of the days, so it's hard to understand how much of it. But more importantly, it did not take into account of some significantly impacted properties like 31 Fernshore Road. The green roof proposed on the walkway and the main building will bring significant maintenance requirements. We have serious concern that the applicants can fulfill that over time and not become a sore eye as we've seen in the pictures from the neighboring flat roof. This construction impacts 15 houses. A number of those affected are actually housing association or currently vacant. Nonetheless, you received 6 strong, significant neighborhood objections, to it. Condition 7 of the construction management plan submitted on the 28th of February with a statement that no work would commence until approved in writing. However, the work on the property has already begun in January. As a matter of fact, there is ongoing obstructions by taking on residential parking without a parking suspension permission, which is impacting all the neighbors. There's pretty tight parking space in London in general. And there's also mention in the traffic management plan of ongoing involvement with the neighbors. Certainly there was initial contact with some of the neighbors, written and also meeting, where several concerns were raised, but the dialogue has pretty much ceased. This is impacting 15 of us to it. As a matter of fact, scaffolding has gone up over the last few days, according to the architect's plan, but one neighbor had to interject and stop because there was no party wall agreement or neighborhood wall agreement with that, to it. So this has been a very confusing, very disruptive construction. We object to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And We're joined by, well, I know we are, because I called you out accidentally last time, but Mr. Kemp and Ms. Sumelodou, you have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening. This planning application proposes a first floor extension to the southwest above the entrance to the main building. The entrance area is currently a single-story structure with a flat roof above it. The existing gap above this flat roof is not visible from the main street, and it is not an important townscape gap that makes a positive contribution to the character of the conservation area, according to the Sloan Stanley Conservation Area appraisal. In fact, it creates many overlooking issues between our property and the Edith Terrace properties, since it allows direct views not just to the first floor level, but to the ground floor level too. Initially, we had suggested a full depth extension on that location in order to eliminate these issues, but also improve the internal arrangement of the property for a family to occupy. Due to the sense of enclosure concerns by the planning authorities, we revised our proposal and removed that extension. We reassessed these concerns and found a more appropriate solution while still providing essential amenities for family living. Following our last planning application approval and further consultation with the planning authorities, we submitted this carefully and consciously redesigned planning application with a significantly reduced size extension. This extension is more than 10 meters away from all the surrounding buildings in all directions. In detail, we now propose an extension that is set back by 1 meter and 75 centimeters from the garden boundary line with 31 Fernshaw Road, and 2 meters and 75 centimeters from the garden boundary line with 5 Edith Terrace. A trellis system is proposed to be attached to it to eliminate any remaining overlooking problems on both sides. This extension will have no openings on any of its facades, only a small roof light. Its proposed shape and design will follow the same approved architectural principles of the main building, but also the adjacent building, number 45 Fernshaw Road. The proposed brick facades and its rectangular volume are coordinated with the previously approved first floor architecture, so that the appearance of the whole property is more cohesive, with a unified design and a clearer identity. Finally, we would like to refer you to the submitted daylight and sunlight report. This report is based on the previously proposed full depth extension and overall has high levels of compliance with BRE recommendations in terms of daylight and sunlight for all the neighboring properties. The currently proposed scheme, with the extension greatly reduced and even further away from the neighbors' garden boundaries, further improves the already unproblematic and previously approved daylight and sunlight conditions to neighboring properties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, who would like to go first? In which case, I'll start. So just a question for the applicants. And I can cover this with officers later as well if you don't have the figures to hand. But so the proposed, and I just, to be clear, want to focus on what the addition of what's being applied on here beyond what's already approved. I don't want to discuss what's already been approved. So the addition that's being applied for here, how close is that to the nearest boundary? And what is the nearest boundary? Is it 35 or 33?
Right. So the nearest boundary, there are two of them on two sides. The nearest one is 31 Fernshaw Road, and there is, this extension is 1 meter 75 centimeters away from the garden boundary line, not from the building. From the building of 31 Fernshaw Road is more than 10 meters away, and if I'm not mistaken, it's 10.25 meters away. Now on the other side, 5 Edith Terrace, this extension is 2 meters and 75 centimeters away from the garden boundary line, and 10 meters.
From which number? Sorry, on the other side, it's borders which property?
The north Edith Terrace, 5 Edith Terrace.
5 Edith Terrace.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's more than, and it's around 10 meters 75 from the actual building.
Thank you very much. And then question to Mr. Weatherly. Am I right in saying are you number 31? Sorry, just to clarify.
Actually, Stan is 31. I'm actually on number 7, Edith Terrace, but we together.
Well, I'll ask you if you're happy to respond on behalf of your neighbours as well as yourself. So in terms of the impact on light, and you mentioned that 31, for example, hadn't been checked, and the sense of enclosure, are you worried predominantly about the house or about the sense of enclosure and light impact on the garden?
What we mostly impacted for 31 is the walkway and the light. The other one is already approved, so there's nothing really to comment on it.
Okay, but I think the walkway is already approved, isn't it? We're talking about the first floor extension, the walkway down the side, yeah.
But for 31, it will be a significant impact on lights.
Yeah, no.
Which I don't believe it was included in the survey submitted.
Okay. Well, I'll clarify that point with officers in a moment. But in terms of the new extension and height of the first floor, including this application, which property does that affect most in terms of light or sense of enclosure?
It affects yours, then the extension affects your property and number 5 most.
It would extend mostly number 5 and number 7.
Okay. Thank you. Colleagues, any further questions on this? No. Okay. We'll now proceed to questions to officers. So I have a couple of questions. So the first one is, first, just to cover the green roof, do we have a condition suggested regarding the maintenance of the green roof?
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just double checking. No, we haven't recommended a condition for the maintenance of the green roof. The only condition regarding the roof is condition 3, which prohibits the use of the roof of the main house.
Well, green. I think the objector has raised a fair point that in the long run, green roofs, they look great if they're well maintained, but they can look terrible. I mean, they can become mud roofs. So is there any reason for us not to add a condition on maintenance of the green roof?
I believe because of the condition 2, which says compliance with the approved drawings, and because there is a green roof shown on the approved drawings, that we thought would be sufficient. But if members think it's necessary to attach additional condition, that's okay.
I think that would be a good idea. The colleagues happy to, yeah. So we'll add a condition on the maintenance of that. And then in terms of the walkway, just to be completely clear, is there anything which we're being asked to approve tonight that doesn't already have approval on the walkway?
I'm just sharing a screen. I hope that will be quite helpful. So members can see the approved scheme on the top. As you can see, the walkway has been already raised, and there's a green roof on top, and that match exactly the same as the proposed scheme at the bottom. The only additional element is this extension over here.
Okay, and then on the border to Edith Terrace is on the north, so in terms of loss of light, that shouldn't be an issue, but sense of enclosure is a consideration, but the decision or the view of officers is that is not an unacceptable change to sense of enclosure.
That's correct. There was a previous planning application, and we have asked the applicant to remove that extension because of the sense of enclosure. As the applicant has been saying, they've reviewed that element, and we are of the same conclusion that there wouldn't be an effect in terms of sense of enclosure.
Okay, following that change, that helps. Colleagues, any further questions? No. Okay, in which case, with the addition of, and we have a standard green roof management condition, I think, didn't we? Or at least maybe not standard, but one we've used before.
We don't, but yeah, we can definitely draft something prior to commencement.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, so yeah, I'll leave that with you to come up with the exact wording. So with the addition of that condition, the recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. So planning permission is granted, and thank you to everyone who joined us for that case. So I think that's the end of the cases with registered speakers. The next case is 5 Seymour Walk, which I'm recusing myself from, so I'll hand over the chair to Councillor Mackover. Wait, we've been going, let's see, colleagues, do you want a quick break? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break, and Councillor Mackover will resume proceedings when we get back.
Yeah, okay. Okay, councillors. All set to resume on 5 Seymour Walk.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I would like to bring members' attention to the addendum report. This application is seeking planning permission for a basement extension with some external manifestations and planned. This is a resubmission of a previously refused basement on the site. The depth of the basement was the only reason for refusal. The applicant has reduced the height of the basement and removed the swimming pool. This is the site location plan and the area view. It is unusual given there are 3 buildings on the site and all within the same single residential use. There's the site photographs showing the properties from the street. Some site photographs from within the site. This is the proposed basement. Members can see a lobby, gym, playroom. The existing and proposed ground floor with the proposed roof lights within the garden. There's the existing sections. Proposed sections. The basement would have an overall height of 4 meters, 3.6 floor to ceiling, plus 400 millimeters of service zone. Just for your information, this is previously refused scheme with a much deeper basement and a base and the pool. The proposed section, again, just for a comparison, refused section, proposed, and the refuse. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are no speakers, so questions from councillors to officers. Councillor North? No, okay. Right. So basically, officers, we're just looking at an application where the only detail that was the only reason that was refused last time was on basement depths. That has been amended by the removal of the pool. Officer recommendation is to grant. Are people ready to move to a vote? Okay. Those in favour of granting, please show. None against, so that's granted. Thank you.
Right, we now proceed to 155 Old Church Street.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is a variation of condition application of a previously granted scheme to make some changes to demolition and some external alterations. This is the area view showing the application site. The demolition elevation, the area outlined in red already benefits from permission to demolish. The additional scope of demolition has been marked in pink, so members can see the upper levels, part of the roof. This is the approved and proposed rear elevation, the approved scheme on the left-hand side, and the proposed on the right-hand side. Members can see that the proposed extension on the first floor level is now proposed to be slightly lower and set back from the neighbouring property to the left. The approved and proposed front elevation, again, members can see some changes to the windows, pagoda reinstated to match the existing, the original one, and the new sliding cast iron painted black gate. And as part of the proposal, the applicant also seeking permission to remove the pink paint from the party wall with number 155 and 3, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any questions? No. I just had a question on the bulk, because my understanding was that this application doesn't actually increase the bulk of the property. Is that correct? And if so, could you comment? Because I think in the objections it says the extension of the rear walls at raised ground floor and first floor levels, extend the rear facade into the garden, thereby completely remove direct and sunlight and daylight from adjoining properties.
No problem. I'll share the elevation with members. So on the left-hand side, we can see the previously granted scheme with that upper level extension, what I believe the objectors are referring to. As members can see, the extension was proposed to be moved closer to the boundary. However, on the right-hand side, you can see the variation that the applicant is seeking permission for, which is now slightly set back. And then also the reducing slightly the height of it. So in terms of the bulk, there is no an additional massing proposed.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any other questions? No. In which case, we proceed to a vote. The recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? That's unanimous, so planning permission is granted. We now move to 37 Carlisle Square.
Thank you. Chairman, again, this is a variation of condition application of a previously granted scheme to make some changes to the location of the AC unit, changes to windows, changes to party wall elevation to increase its height. So this is the area view showing the application site. Granted and proposed elevation. As part of the original permission, the site extension was approved with a door access and the railings above, which members can just see over here. And then the proposed scheme is on the right-hand side. There's no additional height from the street. This is the granted scheme and site elevation on the left and the proposed on the right-hand side. The blue line shows the existing boundary wall, which is proposed to be retained. As members can see, the wall with railings over here is the same as previously granted. The additional height of that extension is behind of just over here. And we've got the granted and proposed rear elevation. This is the additional height of the party wall. And this is just photograph showing the existing boundary wall, and the white panel over here shows actually the height of the proposed new side wall of the extensions, which hopefully members find it helpful. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Colleagues, any questions on this? Councillor North.
If I could take you to the slide that shows the street elevation consented and the street elevation proposed. On the right-hand proposal, you'll see at second floor level that the buildings either side have it looks like a run of bricks. It's difficult to say without a photograph. Can you see what I mean? Under the top floor windows, under the sills, on the right-hand side of the property, there is looks like a brick line, like a soldier calls the bricks, and then it disappears, whereas on the previous consented scheme, it appears and matches the properties either side. I wonder if this could be explained?
It possibly might just be an error in drawings. Unfortunately, I don't have the details why that detail has been removed. But we can ask. We can seek a condition. But I understand what you mean. There is
it's only that
detail there.
Yeah, if that is as it is drawn, then that will stand out, especially with a period facade.
Unfortunately, I don't have the answer for you whether that was previously granted within. If you can just hold 1 second.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the street view of it now, and it's a different coloured brick line that runs along and is unique to that. Well, no, not unique. The neighbouring one has. Yeah. So anyway, it would be better to keep it.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find whether there's anything on the floor plans that it shows that detail. No, unfortunately, I don't have any details of that, but if members would like to add notwithstanding condition, we can then put the condition to ask for a new elevation showing that detailing.
I don't want to hold it up on a detail like that if it can be clarified. I'm happy to leave it to officers, good officers, to ensure that we're not removing an original feature. I'm happy with the officers to decide that.
Yeah. How do we best leave that with you? I think the key is that we want to maintain that different coloured brick line across both properties.
I'm happy to contact the agent and get the verification, and if the chairman wishes to hear from me, I can email across.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, we'll delegate that to you to investigate. Okay. Any other questions on this? I just had one. I mean, I know we protect the gaps, particularly in conservation areas like this. At what point coming up would we say actually the gap is being infringed upon?
I think in this, you can see on this elevation, it is quite a modest extension to the site. You can still have that feeling between the buildings, and if there are any trees behind it, you would still be able to see. That is kind of a planning judgment whether, for example, an additional story would then kind of distract from that gap. But from our perspective, it's still retaining that gap between the properties.
Okay, so no hard and fast rule, just a sort of planning judgment of when the gap is infringed upon. Any other questions? No. In which case, with the not additional condition but request for clarification having been noted, the recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? So it's unanimous. So planning permission is granted. We now move on to 40 Pelham Street.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is seeking approval of Condition 8, which refers to a construction traffic management plan of a previously granted scheme. The development at number 40 Pelham Street involves alterations and improvement to the building, including demolition behind the retained facade and construction of a new basement and a new office building. As members are aware, there's also an application at number 63 and 81 Pelham Street for members to make a decision tonight. That application is for a demolition traffic management plan, and that development also involves demolition of existing building and construction of a new buildings. Both sites are within the same ownership and are located opposite each other. The CTMP and DTMP have complied with the intention that they should be read together. The developers have indicated that they wish to carry out the two developments together, and therefore the management plan submitted took into consideration both developments and sites. So this is the proposed arrival and departure from the site. So the arrival will be from the Earlscourt Road towards Brompton Road. The application site is just located over here. There are various phases within the development. Lots of drawings are submitted within the pack for members to see. But this is the phase 1, which is the setup and early demolition, showing the proposed management plans for both sites. Bankments would be located to ensure safe access for pedestrian across both sites. This is the phase 2, which will be the substructure of number 40 Pelham Street and demolition of 63 and 81. In that phase, there will be an introduction of a one-way system. This is a phase 3, which will be superstructure at number 40 and a basement works at number 63 and 81. There will be also phase 4 with fit out at number 40 and a basement works at number 63 and 81. There will be slightly different arrangement at the weekends. There will be a two-way system at the weekends for the residents to use. And also there will be a diversion route as part of the management plan. Diversion routes would be a one-way system along Pelham Street on Monday and Friday, and also a bus diversion. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, Councillor Mackover.
I was just trying to look for the details in the information. Was this, the road would be closed weekdays 9:30 to 4:30 in one direction? Or was it later than that? I think I picked up those times.
No, so the one-way system will be operating between Monday and Friday all the time, and then from late Friday afternoon until Monday morning there will be a two-way system. Hopefully that clarifies.
How many months is it, or years is it proposed to be like that?
I believe the development at 40 Pelham Street is 18 months, but just 1 second.
Okay, I don't need to know that. I was just asking just to get a scale of the information.
I do have that information,
Okay.
sorry. So 17 months, the applicant's proposing starts May 2024 and they clear up first week of September 2025.
And just on those hours, I thought I picked up that it was maybe from one bit of the CTMP and not the whole of the thing. But if the construction isn't going on all night, why do we need the suspension? Or is it just the way that it's easier for them to lay the road out like that?
Yeah, so from my understanding, that has been the discussion between the applicant and our transport officers. It was more sufficient for us to control just the weekends, because it might get quite confusing for the residents and also drivers around which hours they can use the two-way system along Pelham Street. And also it might be quite confusing for the constructors to, we would have to ensure that they put the correct signs every day as well, which will be more detrimental to the residents.
Councillor Oretti.
Thank you, Chairman. John, just as a summary for understanding to the panel, the public access would be anything after the agreed permitted construction traffic hours. It's accessible to public even on the weekends, because there was a request from the local MP.
No, so the residents will be able to access the street by just one way between every day, but the two-way system would only be from late afternoon on Friday until 8 a.m. on Monday. But the residents will be able to access the street.
The public access. All right, cool. Thank you.
So it is the weekend, two-way access does start on the Friday evening, not on the Saturday morning, which makes sense because there'll be people there to do it. I'll ask a stupid question. If construction goes quicker than planned, presumably there's nothing stopping the street from being returned to two-way use earlier.
Yeah, there's not, yeah.
Okay. Just double checking. Councillor North.
Just a quickie. Do I take it that there's no curbside, street side skips required in this CTMP?
Hopefully I'll share this plan with you. There are various arrangements for various phases of the development. So you can see on this one, there are no skips, but they're proposing to this one, sorry, there will be a timber storage along the street as well. There will be a pit lane for the cars to drive in and drive out. And then on phase 3, again, there will be a pit lane over here. So I'm not sure whether that answers the question.
So I'll take it from that the spoil will be taken from inside the premises rather than on curbside, so there'll be no need for street skips. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, the loading and unloading are within the site. As you members can see on this plan, for example, is the crust area over here and here as well.
Unfortunately, we can't speak to the applicants because this would otherwise have been a question for them. But I was on Pelham Street a couple of days ago, and it already has a one-way system. Is that do we know why that already is the case? Well, no, unfortunately, we can't ask the applicants about that. But anyway, it's not strictly relevant to this application. Utilities. Okay, maybe it's unrelated. Colleagues, any other questions on this one? No. Okay, in which case we proceed to a vote. I don't think there was no addition of any other. No. Recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? Okay. Planning permission. That's unanimous. So planning permission is granted. And then we proceed to the other Pelham Street application, 63 to 81.
Yes, I haven't prepared slides for it because they are the same as the previous one, but if members would like me to run through them again, I'm happy to. But this application is seeking approval of condition 34, which refers to the demolition traffic management plan. Again, they should be read alongside the CTMP at Pelham Street. And so I should have mentioned there is an addendum report as well with an additional representation.
The only question I had was around demolition, and I suppose this doesn't, I'm assuming it doesn't factor into the demolition traffic management plan, which is if dust became, dangerous at an unacceptable level, does that feature into the DTMP at all?
No, it doesn't. It's only for the traffic.
So how is the dust controlled?
There are other conditions attached in the application and also other regimes as environmental health as well.
But it doesn't factor into the DTMP. Colleagues, any other questions on this one? No? Okay, in which case we proceed to a vote. The recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? That's unanimous, so permission is granted. We now proceed to 299 to 305 Fulham Road and 309 Fulham Road.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll just give some background information and the procedural for the land swap at Fulham Road and Kings Road. So there are two cases in front of members tonight, 299 to 305 and 309 Fulham Road, and another at 237 and 239 Kings Road. So application at the Fulham Road is seeking planning permission for refurbishment of existing residential accommodation and rearranging the layout to create 10 residential units, creation of terraces at the rear of the building, and modification of a communal staircase. And that proposal would create 2 additional units on site. Then the application at Kings Road is seeking planning permission for refurbishment again of the existing accommodation to create 4 residential units, and that would result in the loss of 2 units. However, as part of the land swap and the legal agreement, there will be no overall loss of any residential units across both sites. So I will run through each case individually, and if members would like to ask me questions, we can do it after each one. However, members will be able to vote at the end. So this is the site location plan and the area view with the properties outlined in red. So this is the Fulham Road application. This is the rear elevation. There are loads of internal alterations and rearrangement proposed as part of this application. This slide shows some existing arrangement on the top of the slide with the units, which members can see there are existing 8 units. And then at the bottom is the arrangement of the proposed 10 units. This is the proposed size of the existing units, and then the proposed size and mix of the proposed 10 units. And then we've got the proposed rear elevation showing the proposed new extensions, as members can see along here and here, and some roof terraces serving the residential units. That concludes my presentation on this one.
So just to be clear, we'll have presentation on each one separately, but we'll take all the votes at the end. Yes, Councillor Rossi.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the roof terrace, is there a definition of what's being proposed, as in the access, or is it just because of the design? Thank you.
So at the moment, the property doesn't feature any roof terraces at the back, and as part of the refurbishment and rearranging of the units, there is an opportunity to introduce some outdoor space, so the applicant is seeking permission for that, just because of the rearrangement of the new units.
Essentially, they could use that as a, I don't know, ancillary or...
Yes, that will be an amenity space for the residents of those units.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? No, I have one on parking permits, but I'll ask at the end. Yeah, just because there was the objector, just following on from Councillor Rossi, did raise overlooking. Is there new views created? Are there?
I'll just bring the rear elevation. So yes, the roof terraces would be created at the back on this level. So there will be a new ways to look into the neighboring properties. But because of the distance and also the orientation and the relationship between the properties, the officers consider that not to be harmful.
Okay, so be at quite an acute angle. Are there already terraces there?
I think this one here has got already a terrace, but I don't want to confirm without checking the history.
Okay,
But
and
also,
in any case,
I think there are
perhaps doesn't have a view.
some over here as well.
Yeah.
Do you know the distance between that roof terrace and the immediate neighboring properties that's either being overlooked or overlooking from the existing one?
No, unfortunately, I don't have that distance, but if members would like me to find out, I can.
I don't think there are any objections on that privacy issue, I believe.
I think the objection in the pack is from 21 Henniker Mews, which is the one closest to the application property. It does look like it'll be fairly close, but it seems the argument is that the main argument is that the angle view on that property is quite acute, so therefore wouldn't be unacceptable levels of overlooking. Is that correct?
I'm just looking through the officer's report in terms of the impact on the neighbouring property. So I would like to bring members' attention to paragraph 6.27, which specifically talks about the proposed terraces. So the proposed terraces are to be located within the depth of the building enveloped by the existing outriggers of the original building, thereby preventing harmful overlooking into neighbouring properties.
Okay, and there are some windows. There might be staircase windows, but there are some windows at the back already in the closet wings as well, which would have perhaps similar views. Okay, colleagues, any other question on that? Or happy to proceed? We'll proceed to the next case then, the next linked case, 237 to 239 Kings Road.
So this is the area view showing the application side is this property at the corner. On the left-hand side, members can see the existing split. There's existing 6 flats across 2 properties on the upper levels. And on the right-hand side, members can see the proposed split and the proposed layout. So there will be 4 total. This is the split of the existing sizes and the units, and then the proposed. So there will be a loss of 2 on this side. However, given the legal agreement, there will be no loss overall. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Colleagues, any further questions? No, I just have one on the parking permit. So, as I understand it, we're restricting the parking permits or reducing the number by 2 on the basis that if the Fulham Road scheme was built, but the Kings Road scheme wasn't, there would be an increase in number of units, and therefore our policy would be not to provide additional parking permits. But if both are built, then there is no net change in parking permits. So is there any way of adapting that condition so that if both are built, that we don't no longer restrict the parking permits?
Yes, I sought some advice from the officers. So the agent has requested that the cases are dealt separately. So if the Fulham Road can be a standalone application, so if the applicant would like to just implement that permission, there will be an uplift of 2 units on that side. So the legal agreement is seeking to restrict that additional parking pressure on that side. And if they would like to also do the Kings Road, there's no restrictions on the Kings Road to be car-free.
And with the legal agreement, it would secure that, but the Act, well, the Town and Country Plan Act allows an applicant to vary or modify their legal agreement. So if in the future Kings Road does come forward and they want to take back the ability to have permits, so that they can apply to us to vary that, and there would be justification for doing so if the 2 developments had come forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So that leaves the ball in the applicant's court if they want to alter that and link the 2, and thereby get 2 more parking spots. Colleagues, any further questions on those cases? No. Okay. In which case we proceed to a vote. The recommendation is, so we have to vote on each one individually, don't we? Yeah. So starting with 299, 305 and 309 Fulham Road, the recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? So that's unanimous, so planning permission is granted. And then for 237 to 239 Kings Road, again, the recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? And that's unanimous, so planning permission is granted. And so we finish up on 53 to 100 Powers Square.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application has been submitted by the Council and seeking permission for replacement of existing windows, which members can see the area view now on the screen. There's a mix of timber and UPVC windows on site. The proposal is to replace them all with double glazed timber, white painted, which would improve the energy efficiency and external appearance of the buildings. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Colleagues, any questions on that? Councillor North.
Just a quick one really about the consultation. I noticed it says properties notified 1 for quite a large number of properties. Are you saying that the council have only told 1 property that this is happening?
Let me just double check on the system. Our our procedure in terms of contacting and sending letters to residents is based on the boundary and the red line they're sharing. So because of this block, obviously it's been submitted as one. I'm assuming that could be corrected. We've only consulted one as part of the planning system process.
So can I take it from that that there's been some discussion internally in the whole terrace? Because I'm surprised to see nobody in objection or support of this. I mean, this is a considerable upgrade in our housing stock. So this is not including the internal discussions.
I'm not aware of any internal discussions between the council and the residents, but I would think that yes, there would be some.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that case? No? Okay. In which case we proceed to a vote. The recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? That's unanimous. Planning permission is granted. And that brings a close to tonight's proceedings. Thank you all very much.